Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to knit this slouchy hat. Hey guys, I'm Davina from sheepandstitch.com, and today I'm wearing my favorite slouchy hat. So I've been rocking this hat like almost every day. It goes with just about everything. It's super comfy. I absolutely love it. So I'm really excited to be showing you how to knit this hat from beginning to end. All right, so before we get straight into the tutorial, I need to go over a couple things with you, like what skills you need and also what materials you need to knit up this hat. So a couple things first. This hat is knit up in worsted weight yarn, which is a medium weight, and I chose this weight because it's a pretty easy to find yarn. It's a very popular yarn weight, so you should be able to find a worsted weight yarn at your local craft store. Second thing is that this hat comes in 2 sizes for adults. So I'm wearing the adult small, and it also comes in an adult large size. So I'm gonna go over how to choose a size later on in this video, but for now, I just wanted to let you know that there are 2 sizes for this hat. So you might be wondering, am I ready to knit this hat? Can I do it? And that's a great question. So in my opinion, there are 5 essential skills you need to master before knitting this hat. And these skills are knitting, purling, knitting in the round, knitting with double pointed needles, and casting on with the long tail cast on. Okay, so these 5 techniques are really essential. If you know all of them, then awesome, we can get started right away. But if you're not familiar with like 1 or 2 of them, you can click on the one you're not sure about over here, watch the video on how to do it, get familiar with that technique, and then come back here and we can knit this hat together. Ooh, so another thing that I forgot to mention is that this hat is not really for like super newbie beginners. If you've never knit a hat before, then don't start with this one, okay? You can start with the big hat, which is a really great hat for beginners. This hat is like a little bit more difficult. It's like 1 level up from the big hat. So now let's talk materials. First up is the actual pattern, okay? So this pattern is 3 pages long. It looks like this, and you can grab it in the description box below, all right? So there's a download link. Grab that PDF file, print it out, and have it with you, okay? So next up is yarn. Yeah, everybody loves yarn. Okay, so this yarn is by Barocco. It's called Ultra Alpaca, and it is a 50% wool, 50% alpaca blend. And 1 skein will knit up a whole hat, so awesome. Our pattern calls for 3 sets of needles, which I know sounds really excessive, but I'm gonna try and explain each needle to you, okay, so that it makes a little bit more sense. So the first needle that our pattern asks for is a pair of 4mm circular needles. So these circular needles measure 16 inches from tip to tip, and these are considered our smaller needles. Okay, so we're gonna use our smaller needles to knit up, let's see, this portion of our hat, okay? So this area where we cast on, we knit up our 2x2 rib. This kind of stretchy area is going to be knit with our smaller needles. So the reason why we use smaller needles is because we want this part of our hat to be really dense and kind of tight, right? We don't want this stretchy area to be stretched out, right? We want it to keep its shape and to be kind of a tight, dense fabric, because this elastic area is what's keeping the hat on our head, right? So we don't want it to be stretched out. So that's why we use smaller needles. Smaller needles will produce a tighter, denser fabric. That brings us to our next pair of needles, which are our 4.5mm needles. These are also circular needles, and they measure 16 inches from tip to tip. So our larger needles are what we're going to use to knit up the body of our hat. So that would be like this whole portion of our hat. So you might not think that like 0.5mm is a big deal, but when it comes to yarn, it really is. Larger needles will produce a drapier, more flowing fabric, which is really what we want for our hat, right? We want it to be slouchy. So that's why we use larger needles to knit up the body of our hat. Oh, and one more thing, these needle sizes are all recommended needle sizes, okay? So the exact needle size you use will depend on your knitting gauge. So knitting gauge is a super important concept. If you've never heard of it, you don't know what it is, what it means, then definitely click on this video and watch it. It's all about knitting gauge, which is a super important concept. All right, so the last set of needles we'll need are our double pointed needles. Okay, so these guys are the same size as our previous needle that we used to knit up the body of our hat. Okay, so once our hat is too small to fit on our circular needles, we're gonna switch over to our double pointed needles, okay? You'll also wanna have a tape measure. Super handy, gotta have one. So next up are stitch markers, which look kind of like this. I don't want them to fall off my hand. All right, they look like a little ring, and these are awesome for marking off the beginning and end of our round. So you have to have at least one stitch marker, but it's recommended that you have like an extra 5, which will become clearer once we get into the tutorial, okay? So lastly, we're gonna need a tapestry needle. So this guy looks like a giant sewing needle, and we're gonna use this to weave in our ends. So now let's talk about sizing. Let's get out our tape measure, and we're gonna measure the circumference of our head. Okay, so I'm gonna take out my tape measure, and I'm measuring in inches here, okay? So I'm just gonna wrap it around my head. You don't wanna go down here at the base of your neck, you just wanna go around your head where your hat will sit. So here we go. Let's take a look here. And my size is 21.5. All right, so then we're gonna take out our pattern. I'm gonna take out the second page of my pattern here, and in the sidebar under finished measurements, you can see that it says adult small circumference, 21.5 after blocking. Adult large circumference is 22.5 inches after blocking. So keeping in mind your head circumference, figure out which size it falls closer to. So for me, I'm 21.5, so I'm exactly an adult small circumference, okay? So it's pretty clear I should be knitting an adult small. So figure out where your head circumference falls on the, you know, small to large scale, okay? If you're like smack in the middle, you know, you can go both ways, doesn't really matter, okay? So figure out your head size and then decide on a size. So once you've decided what size you want in it, you're gonna print out your pattern and get out a highlighter or a pencil, and we're gonna mark off the instructions that refer to your size. So for me, I'm knitting a size small, so I'm gonna go through and mark off the instructions that refer to size small. So let's see, on page 2, it says with smaller needles cast on 84 in brackets 88 stitches. So 84 refers to the size small, 88 refers to the large size. So the numbers in brackets refer to the large size. So I'm gonna highlight 84 here. So let's keep going down this pattern and look for numbers or instructions that are just for my size small. So here, our next line, it says knit 2x2 rib until piece measures 1.5 in brackets 2 inches from cast on edge. So 1.5 refers to a size small, so I'm gonna highlight that 1.5. If you were knitting a size large, you would highlight 88 up here and 2 down here. Okay, so let's keep on going. And then it says here, adult small, increase round. So that's me, I'm knitting an adult small, so I'm gonna highlight that. And this is an adult large, so I'm gonna ignore that. Okay, so work in textured rib until work measure 7.5 in brackets 8.5 end bracket. So 7.5 is me for a size small. Okay, so here it says adult small decreased round. So that's me. So I'm gonna highlight this section. And now I'm gonna turn over my sheet. And this is just the leftover from the adult small decrease. And then here it's adult large decrease. So this has nothing to do with me because I'm not knitting the adult large. Let's go down here, cut through remaining 12 in brackets 9 stitches. So I'm small, so I'm gonna do 12. All right, so go print up your pattern and highlight the areas in the pattern that refer to your size, and then we can get started in knitting up this hat. All right, so now let's cast on with the stretchy cast on. So I've got my smaller needles here, that would be my 4mm needles, and I'm gonna be knitting a size small, so I'm gonna be casting on 84 stitches. All right, so let's get going. I'm gonna get my yarn out. And the stretchy cast on is really similar to the long tail cast on in that we need a long tail in order to cast on all of our stitches. So I'm gonna kind of eyeball enough yarn to cast on 84 stitches. So I think like, yeah, that's probably about right. And if you're not sure how much yarn you need, you can use that little hack where you take your yarn and wrap it around your needle the number of times of stitches that you need. So if I need 84 stitches, I'm gonna wrap my yarn around 84 times, and however, you know, long that length of yarn is gonna be enough yarn to cast on 84 stitches. So again, if you're not familiar with this technique, you should probably watch the long tail cast on video first, okay? Because this cast on is definitely a level up in terms of difficulty. Okay, so I've got my length of yarn, my long tail, and I'm just gonna make a slip knot. So just a regular old slip knot. Here we go, and again, if you're not sure how to do this, you should check out the long tail cast on video. So I'm gonna put the slip knot onto my needle and then just tighten that puppy up. All right, great. So now my long tail is in the front of my work and the yarn attached to my ball right here is in the back. All right, so let's start casting on. So I'm gonna hold my yarn the same way that I do when I'm doing a long tail cast on. So I'm gonna use my 2 fingers and kind of push them between these 2 yarn strands like this and make kind of a diamond shape. All right, so same beginning as the long tail cast on. I'm just gonna take my finger here, put it down on my slip knot because I don't want it to slide around like this. Not a slip and slide. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my needle and go underneath these 2 strands of yarn that's on my thumb. So I'm just gonna go like this, okay? Then I'm gonna take my needle and go into the loop that my thumb has made. You can see there's kind of a loop around my thumb. So I'm gonna go into that loop, okay? Then I'm gonna twist my hand around so that my hand is sort of facing the left side. And now you can see there's kind of a loop around this finger, right? There's a little slingshot that my yarn has made. And I'm gonna go into that loop. Okay, and I'm gonna turn my hand to kind of help it along. And now, this is a little bit tricky, but just watch closely. You can see there's a little strand here on my needle, right? Just kind of intersecting my needle. And I'm gonna pull my needle into that strand. Now there's 1 extra strand on my needle, and that is my new stitch. I'm gonna drop everything, just let go of everything, and then pull down. Okay, pull down on the front yarn and on the back yarn and just kind of tighten it up like this. And now you can see that I've just cast on 1 stitch, all right? So that was kind of freaky and weird. So we're gonna go through this a couple times, so don't worry about it. So let's try that again. I'm gonna take my thumb and my forefinger, I'm not even sure, this finger right here, go through the 2 strands of yarn, kind of hold it like a diamond shape. Then I'm gonna take my needle, go underneath the 2 strands on my thumb, and then I'm gonna go into the loop on my thumb, just like this, okay? I'm gonna turn my hand around, go through the loop on this finger. So here you can see there's a loop. And then I'm going to kind of pull through this loop here, just like that. And now you can see there's another strand of yarn on my needle, and I'm gonna pull down and tighten everything up, okay? So now I've got 3 cast on stitches, okay? So we just kind of keep going like that, all right? So we're gonna make a diamond shape with our 2 strands of yarn. I'm gonna go underneath the 2 loops on my thumb, go into the loop that my thumb has made, turn my hand over, go into the loop on this finger, here we go, and then now I'm gonna pick out that loop on my needle. So here we go, and pull down. Alrighty, so if this is kind of freaking you out, don't worry, just watch this video closely and try to copy it with your own needle. And if it's really frustrating you, like you just can't get the hang of it and it's making you crazy, then forget about it, okay? This is a great cast on, it's a nice stretchy cast on, but if you can't get the hang of it, then just use the long tail cast on. The long tail cast on is a great all-purpose cast on. Your hat will be perfectly fine if you use the long tail cast on. This cast on just gives it a nicer stretchy edge, okay? So that's why I really recommend that you try to master this cast on, because it's gonna come in handy for lots of different knitting projects. But, you know, if you just don't want to, then forget about it. Just use the long tail cast on, and that's fine, okay? But if you want to learn something new, then try to get this, all right? So I'm gonna do this one more time. So I'm gonna make a diamond shape with my 2 strands of yarn. I'm gonna take my needle and go underneath the 2 strands of yarn on my thumb, and I'm gonna go into this loop that my thumb has made. I'm gonna turn my hand and go into the loop on my second finger, and now you can see there's a strand of yarn that has emerged on my needle. I'm gonna bring my needle through that tiny loop and pick out that strand of yarn, pull down. There we go. All right, so try out this new stretchy cast on method. See if you can't get it. It will take some practice. So good luck to you. Cast on the number of stitches you need and meet me back here. So now I've casted on 84 stitches and I'm ready to join in the round. So depending on your size, you'll have 84 or 88. All right, now before we join in the round, we have to make sure that our stitches are not twisted. Now, if you're not sure what this means and you've never knit in the round before, you should check out my video on how to knit in the round. That will cover everything you need to know. But just a quick refresher, you should make sure that all of your stitches on your needle are facing the same direction so that they are not twisted. If you get your stitches twisted, you'll be in a world of hurt and your hat just won't come together. So this is a really important step. So basically, to make sure that your stitches are not twisted, you'll see that your stitches here have a braided, kind of a braided edge, and then also a round loop, right, that encircles your needle. So you want to make sure this braided edge area is all facing the same direction. So in my case, they're all facing inwards, right? They're all pointing inwards. If my stitches were twisted, like this, for example, I'm intentionally putting a twist in, you would see that, let's see over here, my braided edge is facing inwards up until this point, in which case it twists outwards and it's facing outwards, and that's not good. So you want all of your stitches facing the same direction. If you have a twist, you would just literally untwist it like this, okay? So once your stitches are untwisted and facing the same direction, then you're going to push your needles, or excuse me, you're gonna push your stitches up close to the points of your needles so that it's easier to knit into them. Okay, then I'm gonna get my stitch marker out. I'm gonna put it on my needle and then knit into the first stitch. Oof, let's push that in. First stitch on my left needle. And then I'm going to knit into that stitch. And it might be a little bit tight. The first round of our stitches are usually pretty tight. And I'm gonna pull tightly on that first stitch because this is our join and I want it to be nice and tight, nice and secure. Okay, so we are knitting a 2x2 rib, which means we're going to be doing a knit 2 and a purl 2. So I've done my first knit stitch here, and I'm going to do my second knit stitch. So I'm going to do, oof, it's a tight one, knit. Okay, so now I've done 2 knit stitches, then I'm going to do a purl 2. Okay, 2x2 rib is basically a knit 2 and a purl 2. So I've just done my first purl and here is my second purl. Cool, so these 4 stitches basically make up the foundation of a 2x2 rib. Knit 2, 1, 2, purl 2, 1, 2. Okay, so now we're gonna start all over again. We're gonna do a knit 2. So I'm gonna knit into these next 2 stitches. And I'm gonna push my stitches up to my needle as I knit them. Okay, and then we're gonna do a purl 2. All right, and that's all there is to the 2x2 rib. Knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2. Okay, we're gonna do that across the whole needle. Okay, once we get to our stitch marker, which marks the beginning and end of our round, we're gonna slip this guy and then continue knitting knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, all the way across. All right, so work your 2x2 rib across your whole round and then meet me back here. So I'm nearing the end of my round. I've just got 2 stitches left and this is going to be my last 2 purl 2. So here we go. I'm going to purl 1 and purl 2. Awesome. So I'm going to tighten up that last stitch and now I'm going to slip my stitch marker over to my right needle and start all over again. I'm going to do a knit 1. There we go. knit 1, and knit 2, and purl 1, and purl 2, okay? So it's pretty easy going. At this point, you're just gonna knit 2, purl 2, all the way across until your piece measures 1.5 inches or 2 inches, depending on your size. And you're going to be measuring from this cast on edge. And just so you know, you don't have to memorize that, right? You don't have to keep saying to yourself, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, because your knitting basically tells you what to do. So if you look at your stitch here, your next stitch, these are 2 purl stitches, right? So you would purl the purl stitches. And when you get to the knit stitches, you would knit them, right? So these 2 are knit stitches, so you would knit into them. So your knitting basically tells you what to do next. You don't have to memorize that knit 2, purl 2 pattern. You can see the next 2 stitches are purl stitches, so you would purl into them. Okay, and I'm running out of yarn here, so I need to join a new ball of yarn. But basically that's all there is to the 2x2 rib. Just knit 2 and purl 2 across your whole round until you reach the length that you need for your size. So now I've knit up 1.5 inches of my 2x2 rib, and it looks really awesome, and it's nice and stretchy, exactly as we want it to be. So I'm going to take out my tape measure here and just measure it out to make sure I've got exactly 1.5, and here we go, and exactly it's 1.5 inches, which is perfect. So if you are knitting the size large, you'll want it to be 2 inches. Okay, so now we're ready to move on to our increase round. So I'm going to take my stitch marker off. We don't really need it for now. So before we knit our increase round, we need to move our knitting over to our larger needle. So this guy right here is my larger needle. It's 4.5 millimeters, whereas this guy right here is 4 millimeters. So I'm just going to knit my yarn, or excuse me, knit my hat directly onto my larger needles. I don't need to like transfer it. First, we can just kill 2 birds with 1 stone by knitting our next round with our larger needles. Okay. So the increase round is different for the small size and the large size. So I'm going to go through the small size first, and then I'll go through the large size, okay? So we're going to use our large needle and stick it into the first stitch of our round. And for the increase round, this portion is actually the same for both sizes, okay? So for the increase round, we're going to knit 3. So here we go. I'm going to just knit 3, and I'm using my new larger needles to do it. So here we go, we've knit 3, and then I'm going to M1. Now M1 means make 1, so we are making a new stitch, all right? So how you do an M1 is you will take your needle and just kind of lift up that strand of yarn that's between your 2 stitches. So between these 2 stitches, here's a strand of yarn, right? So I'm gonna pick that strand of yarn up, and I'm gonna use my left needle and just go in front of it, just like that. I'm gonna pick that strand of yarn up just like that, okay? So let's try that again. I use my right needle to pick up that strand of yarn first, and then use my left needle to kind of take it over like that. But if you wanted, you could just use your left needle and go in front of that strand of yarn and pick it up, okay? Both of these end up with the same result, okay? So then I'm going to take my right needle and I'm going to knit into my strand of yarn just like that I just picked up. I'm going to go from the back just like that, and I'm going to knit into that little picked up strand of yarn and then drop it off. So now you can see that I've just created a new stitch from that strand of yarn, right? So that's what an M1 is. It means make 1 stitch. All right, so after we've done our M1, we're gonna do a knit 4. So here we go, I'm gonna knit 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're gonna do another M1. All right, so we're gonna take our strand of yarn between these 2 stitches, okay? And I'm gonna pick it up just like this from the front to the back, just picking up that strand of yarn. I'm gonna take my left needle and pick it up from the front to the back again, just like that. Then I'm going to knit into that picked up strand from the back, okay? So I'm not going in like this, like how we do normally knit. I'm going in from the back. Okay, so you can see just like that, there's gonna be a little bit of resistance when you push in, and that's exactly what we want. We're gonna knit that, and now we've completed our second M1. So that's the repeat for both the small and the large. Knit 3, M1, knit 4, M1. And we're gonna repeat this sequence all the way around, our whole round, until we get to the end. So that's the instructions for the small size. For the large size, we're going to repeat this sequence all the way around until we get to the last 4 stitches, at which point we're going to do something a little bit different. All right, so let's repeat that again. We're going to do a knit 3, 1, 2, 3. We're going to do an M1, so I'm going to pick up that strand of yarn between the 2 stitches, going to pick it up again onto my left needle. I'm going to knit into the back of that strand of yarn. Here we go. That's an M1. All right, then we're going to knit 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we'll do another M1. So I'm going to pick up that strand of yarn like this, and then pick it up again with my left needle. And again, you don't have to do this. You can just take your left needle and go into that strand of yarn and pick it up in one little swoop like that. And then we're going to knit into the back of that picked up loop. There we go. All right, so now we've just completed this sequence twice. All right, so complete the sequence all across the round. If you're a small size, you would do this till you get to the end of the round. If you are a large size, you will complete the sequence till you get to the last 4 stitches, and then meet me back here. If you're getting tripped up as you work your increase round, like let's say you forget whether you're supposed to do a knit 3 or a knit 4, did you just do a make 1, or what happened just now? You know, you're just getting mixed up in your increase round. What you can do is use stitch markers to help you mark the end of a sequence. So let's say, for example, you just finished one sequence. You did a knit 3, make 1, knit 4, make 1. And what you can do is use a stitch marker and just mark the end of that sequence, right? So this is not to mark the beginning or end of your round. It's just to help you mark the end of your sequence so that once you've done that, you know that, okay, I've completed my sequence and now I'm going to move on to my sequence again and do a knit 3 and a make 1 and a knit 4. So this is our sequence, right? That we are repeating across our whole round. So now let me just count. The sequence should be, okay, knit 3, that's our make 1, and knit 4, and then we need to do another make 1. Here we go. All right, so this marker helps to mark the end of my sequence. So let's say I continue knitting my increase round, but let's say around here I get confused again. I forget, did I just do a knit 3 or did I do a knit 4? Where am I in the sequence? What you can do is just rip back your work to this marker, and now you know that after you reach this point in your marker, you can start your sequence fresh again, right? So I'll do a knit 3, make 1, knit 4, make 1, and continue on and on, right? So instead of having to rip back all the way to the beginning of your round right here and do your whole increase round all over again, you can just mark the end of your sequence so that you can start over again, right? So you can set a marker in anywhere you want. So let's say I complete 3 more sequences and I want to mark it again, I can just slip my marker in, and that just helps you as you are working your increase round. Once you finish your increase round, you get all the stitches you need for your size, you can just remove these markers later on. All right, so that's just one way to help you stay organized as you knit your increase round. So now I'm near the end of my round for my size small, and I've got 7 stitches left on my smaller needle. So let's complete our last increase sequence. I'm gonna do a knit 3. Here we go, a knit 3 and a make 1 and a knit 4. So 2, 3, and 4. Perfect. All right, so now take a look our hat is off of our smaller needles here and onto our larger needles. Pretty awesome, right? So that's a nice, easy way to transfer our stitches over. Now, we can't forget our last M1, right? I just did a knit 4. So I'm gonna do one last M1, and here's the last stitch of my round and the first stitch of my round right here. I'm gonna pick up that yarn between them, lift it up, and do my last M1. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to take my stitch marker out and just pop that onto my needle and mark it off. This is now the beginning and end of our round. All right, so we have just completed our increase round, and you should have 108 stitches on your needles for a size small. So go ahead and count up all of these stitches around your hat, and if you have 108 stitches, then we're ready to move on to the textured rib, which is super fun, and that's coming up next. All right, so if you're knitting the large size, we're gonna get to the last 4 stitches, and then we're gonna do something a little different, okay? So once you get to the last 4 stitches, and remember this is just for the large size increase round, we're going to knit 3. Here we go, so I'm gonna knit 3, 2, 2, and 3. And I'm gonna do an M1, okay? So here we go, I'm gonna do not my last M1, but a M1. Here we go. Knit into the back of that strand. Okay. Then I'm going to do a knit 1. So here's my last stitch. I'm going to do a knit 1. And I'm going to do an M1. So this may seem kind of weird, but first of all, our needle, our small needle, is off of the hat. So we can just set that needle aside, and now all of our stitches are on our large needle. Cool. All right, but let's not forget, we're gonna do our last M1. We're basically at the beginning of our round now, and you can see we've got this strand of yarn between the 2 stitches, the first and the last stitch. So I'm gonna pick up that strand of yarn between my first and last stitch, and we're gonna do our last M1, knit into the back of that strand of yarn, and there we go. So now we've completed our increase round for our large size. And at this point, I'm gonna take my stitch marker, place it back onto my needle. All right, so at this point we're going to do a stitch count. So you're going to count up all the stitches on your needle and make sure that you have 114 stitches. That's the number of stitches you need for the large size. So once you have the stitches you need for your size, then we can move on to the next section. So now we're ready to work our textured rib, which makes up the bulk of our hat. So the textured rib is a 2-round repeat. The first round is going to be a knit 1 through the back loop and a purl 1. The second round is super easy. It consists of knitting all of your stitches, so pretty easy. All right, so let's go through this pattern together. So I'm going to get my stitch marker, put it back onto my needle to mark the beginning and end of my round, and we're going to work round 1 together. So round 1 consists of knitting 1 through the back loop. So what that means is, instead of knitting our stitch as we normally do, like this, through the front loop, we're going to knit this first stitch through the back loop. So it's very similar to what we did when we did our M1 when we were increasing. So instead of knitting from the front, we're gonna knit through, whoopsie, we're gonna knit through the back. Okay, so here we go. So again, you're gonna experience a little bit of resistance as you move your needle through. Okay, then we're gonna knit 1. Okay, so that's a knit 1 through the back loop. Then we're gonna purl 1. So we'll bring our yarn up front and we'll purl 1. And that is basically it, okay, for your round 1. We're gonna knit 1 through the back loop, okay? And then we're going to purl 1. And we just repeat that across the whole round, okay? So again, not knitting through the front loop as you normally do. You're going to knit through the back loop. So here we go, here's our back loop, knit into that, there we go, and then a purl 1. Okay, so you would repeat this across your whole round till you get to the beginning of your round, and that is your round 1 of textured rib. So knit your first round and then meet me back here and we'll work the second round together. So now I'm near the end of my first round. I'm doing a knit 1 through the back loop, and here's my last purl. Cool. All right, so now we just finished our first round of the textured rib. Not too hard, right? Not too bad. All right, now we're going to work our second round. I'm gonna move my stitch marker over, and the second round is super easy. It is just knitting all of your stitches, okay? So that's literally it. We're just gonna knit, 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 knit all the way across our whole round. All right, so pretty straightforward. Our second round is just knitting all the way around. So once you've finished your second round of just straight up knitting, then meet me back here. All right, so now I've just finished my second round where all I did was knit. Super relaxing round. I almost fell asleep as I was doing it. Love a straight up knit round. So now we're gonna move on to our round one. So textured rib is just a 2-round repeat. After you finished your second round, you'll move back to round one. All right, so repeat rounds 1 and rounds 2 until you have 7.5 inches of fabric if you're knitting a size small, or 8.5 inches if you're knitting a size large. And you would be measuring from the cast on edge right here. So you'd be measuring from here on up. All right, so meet me back here when your fabric is the length that it should be for your size. So here's a couple tips for you as you work your textured rib. So when you're working round one, you don't need to memorize knit through the back loop, purl 1, knit through the back loop, purl 1. You can actually look at the work that you've already knit to kind of tell you what to do next. So for example, this is my next stitch on my left needle. And if I'm not sure, should I be knitting or purling, I can just take a look at the stitches below that stitch. So here's my stitch, and directly below it, you can see there's kind of a column, right? A column of knit stitches here. And right beside that, if I look at the stitch right here and I look down, you can see there's a column of like purl stitches, right? So when I look at my next stitch, if I know that there's a knit column directly below it, well, I'm gonna be continuing that knit column, right? So I'm gonna do a knit 1 through the back loop. All right, so this next stitch on my left needle, when I look down, I can see there's kind of a purl column forming directly below it. So I want to continue that purl column, so I'm gonna purl. All right, and I'm just talking about round one, okay? Round one where you're doing a knit 1 through the back loop and a purl 1. So then I can see this next stitch here, there's a knit column right directly below it. So I'm going to knit 1 through the back loop, all right? So in this way, you don't need to memorize round one. You can just look at your knitting and that will tell you what to do next. Woohoo! So look at our hat. It is really starting to look like a hat now, huh? It's got like shape and everything. All right, so I don't know about you, but I had a grand old time knitting my textured rib, made some popcorn, had some tea, watched a movie, did some Netflixing. All right, so now we are ready to measure our hat. And let's see here, and perfect. So I've got exactly 7.5 inches. If you're knitting a size large, you'll need 8.5 inches. And if you want a little bit more slouch on your hat, you can add like an extra 1/2 inch or even a full inch if you want your hat to be a little bit longer and thus more slouchy. So it's totally up to you. For me, I'm gonna leave this as it is, and I'm gonna move on to my decrease section next. Oh, but one more thing. Okay, so in your pattern, it says that you should end having worked around 1. So that means that's gonna be your knit 1 through the back loop, purl 1. So your last round before we move on to our decrease round should be a round 1. So if you take a look at your knitting and your last round was a round 2, meaning that it was a knit round, then work one more round of round 1, and then we can move on to our decrease round together. All right, so good job. We are way more than halfway done. And, you know, admire your work, because next we're gonna start decreasing. Now we're ready to work decrease round 1. So both sizes are pretty similar in terms of their first decrease round, so we're gonna work them together. So you'll see that for size small and large, we're gonna be doing a knit 2 together and a knit 2 together. So a knit 2 together is a decrease stitch. What's gonna happen is we will knit these 2 stitches together as if they were 1. Okay, so let's try that out. We'll use our right hand needle and go into these 2 stitches, okay? then we're just going to knit into them. All right, so now you can see that those 2 stitches have now become 1 stitch. So we've decreased 1 stitch. All right, so let's do that again. We're gonna do another knit 2 together. So here are my 2 stitches, and I'm going to just knit into them. I'm gonna push my needle into both of those stitches, and then I'm going to knit into both of the stitches. Cool, so now I've got 2 stitches where before there were 4 stitches. All right, so the next part of our round says we're going to knit 14, and if you're knitting a size large, you're going to knit 15. All right, so let's do that together. We're just gonna knit across 13 and 14. Okay, so that's what I need to do for my size small. If you're knitting a size large, you'll need to knit 15. All right, so I've just completed my first decrease repeat sequence. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to take another stitch marker and I'm just gonna mark off that repeat. Okay, so you don't have to do this. This is completely optional, but very, very helpful. I highly recommend you do this. Okay, so I'm going to take my stitch marker, which is a different color than my marker for the beginning of my round. I don't want to get these stitch markers mixed up, so it's a different color. And I'm just going to pop this onto my needle. Okay, so this stitch marker marks 1 repeat sequence in my decrease round. All right, so I'm just going to pop that marker in there and I'm going to repeat my sequence. Okay, so I'm going to do a knit 2 together. Here we go. And another knit 2 together. And a knit 14 or a knit 15 if you're knitting a size large. All right, so let's work this repeat together. And at the end of this repeat sequence, I'm going to put another stitch marker. And this really helps us to keep organized as we're knitting our decrease sequence. And it's very similar to what we did when we worked our increase round. So here we go. Here's our 2 knit 2 together. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I need 2 more stitches, 13 and 14, or 15 if you're knitting a size large. Okay, so I've just completed my second repeat sequence and I'm going to take a second stitch marker and just mark off that decrease sequence. Okay, so work across your first decrease round and put in some stitch markers after each sequence, like what I'm doing. And I'll show you why this is really useful as you work all of your decrease rounds. Now this is totally optional, so if you don't have stitch markers or you just don't want to do this, that's fine too. You can just work across your whole decrease round without stitch markers. No big deal. So now I'm near the end of my decrease round 1 and 14. Perfect. So I finished all of my decrease repeats and now I'm at the beginning of my round. So I'm going to move my stitch marker over. Okay, so at this point we're going to count up all the stitches on your needle and make sure that you have the right number of stitches for your size. So for me, I'm knitting a size small. I need to have 96 stitches on my needle. If you're knitting a size large, you should have 102. So go ahead, count up your stitches and make sure they match up. If they do, then we can move on. And if they don't, then you may have to undo your work and redo that decrease round 1. So let's move on to round 2. So round 2 is really familiar. It is a knit 1 through the back loop and a purl 1. So you should know this really, really well by now because this is what you did when you were knitting all that textured rib, okay? So I don't think I need to go through this round with you. So let's race through this round. And when you get to the stitch markers for your repeats, just slip them, okay? Don't do anything with them, just slip them over and meet me back here when you are finished. So I'm nearing the end of round 2 and here's my last purl stitch. Awesome, so now we're on to round 3. So if you look at round 3, you'll notice that it looks very similar to round 1. We're doing a knit 2 together, knit 2 together, knit 12 for a size small or knit 13 for a size large, right? Very similar format. So let's work this first repeat together. I'm gonna do a knit 2 together, here we go. And another knit 2 together, and then we're going to do a knit 12 or a knit 13 for size large. Okay, so here we go, 3, 11, and 12. All right, Now you'll notice that when we finished our first repeat sequence, we hit our stitch marker. Wow, what a coincidence, right? Except that it's not a coincidence at all because I planned it that way. So we've hit our stitch marker, and what we're going to do now is we're going to slip it over to our right needle. And now for our next sequence, all you need to do is knit 2 together, knit 2 together, and then just knit all the way to your next marker. You don't even need to keep track or even keep count because these stitches are all 12 stitches, right? You don't believe me? Let's count them. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, right? Perfect. So that's exactly the number of stitches we need to knit for a size small. And if you're knitting a size large, you'll find that you have 13 stitches here. All right, so isn't that super magic? Ooh. But these stitch markers are super, super handy. So we don't need to be counting our decrease sequences anymore, right? We can just rely on our stitch markers, which makes life so, so much easier. So you don't have to use these stitch markers, but I find that they are very, very handy. All right, so let's do that again. I've just reached my second stitch marker. So I'm gonna slip that stitch marker over. All I need to do is knit 2 together, do another knit 2 together, and now instead of counting knit 1, knit 2, knit 3, knit 4, I'm just going to knit, okay, all the way to this stitch marker, all right? At which point I'll slip this over, do a knit 2 together, knit 2 together, and knit all the way around to this stitch marker, okay? And we'll do that across our whole round until we get to the beginning of our round. So, little pep talk here. You'll notice that when you look at your pattern, all the odd numbered decrease rounds follow the same format, right? Knit 2 together, knit 2 together, knit something, okay? Knit a number of stitches. So you're pretty familiar with this now, right? Because you can also follow your stitch markers, right? Your stitch markers will guide you as you go along. Okay, this applies for all your decrease rounds, your odd numbered rounds going forward. So I'm not going to accompany you for the rest of the decrease rounds because I think you kind of get it, right? The knit 2 together isn't too hard, and then knitting up to your next stitch marker is pretty straightforward. Okay, so let's take a look at our even numbered rounds. So our even numbered rounds, most of them just say repeat round 2. And round 2 is just knitting 1 through the back loop and purling 1, which is super familiar to you by now. You could probably, film your own tutorial about doing that. So you're gonna work the rest of your decrease rounds until you hit round 12 for size small and round 14 for size large, at which point the pattern changes just a little bit, and we'll go through the rest of those rounds together. But for now, just work through your decrease rounds. So repeating round 2 for all of your even rounds, and working your decrease round for all your odd rounds, and using your stitch markers as a guide. All right, so I hope that makes sense. I have faith that you can do this. You know what you're doing. You got this. All right, you got this. So I'll meet you back here on round 12 for size small or round 14 for size large. So as you're working your decrease, you may notice that your stitches are getting fewer and fewer, and you've got to kind of stretch them across your needle in order to even knit them. And this is really normal because we are literally decreasing the number of stitches, right? So we started out with a lot of stitches, and as we decrease, we have less stitches to go around our needle. You can see my needle's poking out here because there are so few stitches. So at this point, it's a good idea to switch over to our double pointed needles. So I'm assuming that you know how to work with these guys. If not, you can check out this video here that goes into a lot more detail. So I'm not going to demo how to knit with them because this video will cover all of that and more. So click on this thumbnail to learn how to transfer your stitches from your circular needles to your double pointed needles. And if you already know how to do this, then just switch over to your double pointed needles when your hat gets too small for your circulars, and then just continue knitting with them until you hit round 12 for size small or round 14 for size large. All right, so now I've just finished round 11 and I'm ready to work round 12 for size small. So on round 12 for small and round 14 for size large, we're just going to knit all of our stitches, okay? So we're not going to be doing a knit one, purl one. We're just going to be knitting our stitches, and from here on out, our remaining even rounds are going to be all knit stitches. So meet me back here when you reach round 15 for small and 16 for large, and we'll do that last round together. So now I am on round 15, which is the last round in the decrease section. If you're knitting size large, that would be round 16. And what we're gonna do is just knit 2 together across the whole round. So this is super exciting because once we've completed this round, then we are seriously finished. Well, okay, not finished, but we are super close to being finished our hat. So let's do this. Super exciting. And I've got 4 more stitches to knit together. And here's my last 2 stitches. Whoa. Here we go. So I've just finished my last round and I'm just gonna count up my stitches. Let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. Perfect. So that's the exact number of stitches I need for my last round. Count up your stitches if you've got 12 stitches or 9 stitches if you're knitting a large. Then we are ready to get our scissors out. So now I've finished my round 15. I've knit 2 together around the whole round, and look at this. Oh my gosh, our hat is like pretty much so close to being done. So now we're ready to cut our yarn loose. So I've got a pair of scissors here, and I'm just gonna leave a tail of like, I don't know, like 10 inches or so, something like this looks pretty good. I'm gonna cut it off and just get that yarn out of the way. So here's our yarn tail. What we're gonna do is weave this yarn throughout all of the stitches, and then we can just get rid of all of our needles. Okay, so I'm gonna take my strand of yarn that I just cut off, and I'm gonna take it and wrap it around my needle like this, and then I'm just gonna move. All right, let's try that again. All right, here, I'm going to take my strand of yarn, bring it over my needle, so it doesn't really matter which way. You can go this way or underneath the needle, doesn't really matter. And then we're gonna take our stitches and move them over this strand of yarn, right? So this strand of yarn here, this loop is my strand of yarn that I cut off, okay? So here we go. I'm gonna move it over and move this stitch over, move it over, and here's my last stitch, move that one over. All right, so now I'm gonna pull that strand of yarn through. Awesome, so now my needle, I can put that aside. My stitches are off that one needle, and we're gonna just move across to these 2 needles. Okay, so I'm gonna turn my work around a bit. I'm gonna take my yarn, wrap it around my next needle, and then just move the stitches over that strand of yarn. So you can use a tapestry needle if you'd like to do this. It doesn't really matter. You just basically wanna thread that strand of yarn through the tail yarn. You just wanna secure them in place, right? So this is how I usually do it. I find it's easier than getting a tapestry needle, but you know, whatever works for you. So here we go. Here's my last needle. I'm gonna take my yarn and wrap it around that needle. Whoops, I am very clumsy today. Okay, and then just bring the stitches over that loop, and then I'm gonna just pull it through. Whoa, woohoo! So here we go. So now my hat is off the needles. This is so exciting, right? I've got a hat on my hands. Okay, but you can see there's kind of a big hole here, right? So I need to pull the yarn tightly, okay, to secure those stitches at the top of my hat. And we need to bring this strand of yarn into the inside of our hat, and then we're gonna secure this strand of yarn. I'm gonna get out my tapestry needle. Here we go. So I'm just gonna thread up this strand of yarn here onto my tapestry needle, and I'm gonna bring this strand of yarn to the inside of my hat. So you can see the little hole that's formed at the top of my hat. I'm going to plonk my needle in there and then pull it out from the inside. Here we go. And we just want to bring this in. So we'll hide it, and I'm going to pull it nice and tight so that hole is no longer there. And then I'm going to turn my hat inside out. So here we go. Here is the top of my hat right here, and I just want to secure this strand of yarn in place so that it doesn't unravel. So here we go. I'm just gonna take this strand of yarn and go into one of the bumps around the top of the hat. Okay, it doesn't really matter which one, it just needs to be close. Okay, so I'm just gonna push my needle into one of these little stitches at the top of my hat, and then I'm just gonna pull it really tightly, make sure it stays in place. And then I'm going to go into another stitch at the top of my hat. So again, doesn't really matter where it is, it should just be pretty close to the top. So here I'm going to choose this guy over here. There we go, and I'm going to continue to pull it. All right, and I'm going to go into maybe another stitch over here. So I've gone into 3 stitches, and I just want to secure this strand of yarn in place, right? That's really the main objective of what we're doing right now. Okay, so now it looks pretty secure. When I pull at it, it doesn't expand, right? This hole is still really nicely shut. All right, so now I'm gonna weave in this strand of yarn into the rest of my hat. So I'm gonna go in like 5 or 6 times. Again, I'm just going into stitches near the top of the hat. So I'm just sort of weaving them in with my tapestry needle, and this just helps to keep our strand of yarn in place. So I'm going into the little purl bumps because I find those are easy to camouflage your yarn into. So here we go. I feel pretty good about this, and I'm just going to take out my pair of scissors and just trim off that strand of yarn. There we go, get rid of that. And now our hat is nicely secure. So I'm going to turn it inside out again. So now the top of our hat, nice and secure, I can pull on it and the hole stays nice and tight. Perfect. Go and try on your hat, see if it fits, admire it, and then we're gonna block this guy out for a perfect slouchy fit. All right, so now we're ready to block our hat. So I've got a bowl of water here. It's just filled with lukewarm water. And you don't need to have a bowl like this. You can just stand by your kitchen sink or your bathroom sink and have water ready. I've also got a towel in case we have any spills, and also a plastic bag. All right, so any plastic bag will do. The closer in size to your hat it is, the better. So you don't really want like a huge garbage bag. Something like this is perfectly fine. All right, so next what we're gonna need is some clothes. All right, so basically any clothes will do, clothes or towels, something soft that we can stick into our bag is awesome. Okay, so basically we're going to take our hat and kind of dunk it into the water. And what that will do is really soften up the yarn, and just by soaking it in the water, it will make the fabric relax, right? And that will help it to be more drapey, and we can also shape our hat to whatever size we want it to be once it's wet. So with that in mind, I'm gonna take my hat and just dunk it into my water. And I don't wanna really like soak it completely. I just want it to be 80% wet. And I'm also taking care not to soak the brim of my hat because I want this area to stay really stretchy. I don't need this area to become larger at all. I want it to keep it stretched. So I'm really just soaking the top of my hat and also like the body of my hat. So like this area. So, okay, I'm gonna squeeze out some water, and I'm not wringing it, okay? I don't want this to felt. I just want to squeeze the water out. So I'm just literally just kind of squeezing it. All right, so I'm gonna take my water out of the picture. I don't need this anymore. I'm gonna wipe up some water that's spilled here. Now I'm gonna take out my plastic shopping bag, and I'm gonna take out some of my clothes here. I've got some shirts here, and I'm just gonna ball them up and stuff them into my bag. Okay, so the point of this is we want to create kind of like a head mold. That sounds kind of weird, but basically kind of a round shape that we can put our hat onto to stretch it out, right? So it'll dry in that shape. So the amount of t-shirts you have really depends on how big and what shape you want your hat to be. So I'm just gonna stuff in a few here and kind of squeeze out the air. Okay, so this looks like a pretty good head shape, and I'm gonna take my wet hat and just stretch it over this plastic head that I've made, okay? I can tell that the fabric is kind of stretched out at this point. If I wanted my hat to be longer, ooh, this is a bit of a lumpy head. Okay, so if I wanted my hat to be longer, I could just pull it, right? Like really kind of pull it over my bag like this so that it's like really stretched out, right? The great thing about this is that this is a hat filled with t-shirts, so you can always add more t-shirts. If I feel like I want this to be a little bit bigger, I can just add, like this is a towel, just open up my bag and add more, right? So this is a pretty easy way to shape your hat. Again, I don't want to stretch this area, right? I want to keep this area pretty tight, so I don't want to touch this area. I'm really just concerned about the body of the hat, okay? And I'm not going to let it lie like this. I'm going to let it sit upright, okay? Because then all of my hat can get some air time to really dry out. So that's all there is to it. We're just going to leave it alone, let it dry. So how'd your hat turn out? I'm dying to know. I hope it's awesome and slouchy and amazing and that you love it. And if you do, then make sure you tag me on Instagram because I would love to see it. I love to see finished projects and of course the work of your hands in all its glory. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them down below and I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. And if you liked this video, then make sure you give it a big thumbs up. 2 thumbs up, way up. I miss Siskel and Ebert. Anyway, give it a big thumbs up if you like this video. And if you want to see more videos like it, then subscribe to this channel because I will be adding more videos on a regular, semi-regular, fairly regular basis, okay? So thanks so much for watching. I'm Davina from sheepandstitch.com. Have a great day and happy knitting.